for joining. We are going to give it a few minutes here as our attendees populate and we kind of get a good idea. We've got over 30 attendees and growing. I do want to, if there are any individuals who are not part of the media, we respectfully ask that you please log in through the live stream at live.grps.org. There was this Zoom link for media only was unfortunately published publicly, and so there may be some individuals who are logging into the Zoom for the press conference. We have a separate live link, live streaming at live.grps.org. That's available in both English and Spanish. Just check our participants here, give it just a few more minutes. We're at 51 attendees and I saw a few people dropped off there. Thank you so much for those who logged into the Zoom and recognize that that was published erroneously and that we have a separate link for our general viewing public. This Zoom link is for the media, but we will have a live link at live.grps.org. For those in the media who are on this Zoom, there is both an English and Spanish option. If you go down to language under more or on the bars there, you can choose language interpretation for those that may prefer to have a Spanish interpretation. That we will be doing that live both on the Zoom, but there's also the option at the public link at live.grps.org. For those in the media, we are going to start with a speech from Dr. Roby, where she's going to be presenting the details of the plan, high level, and then we will have a Q&A section at the end. What I will be doing is monitoring the Q&A, so if you look at your option for chat, in the Q&A, you can post that you're interested in posing a question. We will call you in one at a time as those questions kind of come in. So if your question hasn't been answered, know that I am going to be monitoring every step of this, and we will do our best to get to the answers. Our goal is to have a hard stop around 3:15. So if there's any follow-up questions, you can always email me at helmholtj@grps.org or communications@grps.org. I am looking one last time here. We are at 44 attendees, and I think we're ready to go. So without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Leadrian Roby, to talk about our plans for the start of school. Dr. Roby.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Grand Rapids community. A tremendous amount of time, energy, expertise, planning, stakeholder feedback, and collaboration with the union has gone into developing our COVID-19 preparedness response plan. We have relied on multiple sources for direction, including, but not limited to, the KISD Futures Committee, the State Return to Learn Task Force that Dr. Gorman served on, the Governor's COVID Task Force on Education Return to School Advisory Council, Kent County Health Department, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Disease Control, the Governor's Office, and more. On June 30th, Governor Whitmer issued an executive order that included recommendations from her COVID-19 task force on the Michigan Safe Schools Roadmap. The executive order requires that all districts develop 3 plans in preparation for the fall: 100% in person, 100% distance learning, and a hybrid combination of the two. As part of our planning, we surveyed our parents and staff to get feedback about our distance learning plan this past spring and their thoughts and concerns returning to school this fall. The KISD survey in June received nearly 4,000 responses from GRPS parents, specifically on the safety question. 71% said they were extremely or very confident that distance learning would be the safest option. After Governor Whitmer released her executive order and the Michigan Safety Schools Roadmap, we surveyed parents again. The survey technically ended last week, Thursday, and the findings show most support starting back with distance learning. Of our nearly 7,000 parents representing more than 12,000 students, 48% chose distance learning as their most preferred option, followed by the hybrid at around 26% and in-person learning at 25%. Of the nearly 1,000 staff members, 53% preferred distance learning, followed by 25% who preferred hybrid and 33% for in-person learning. We have repeatedly said that safety, health, and the well-being of our students and staff are our top priority and will be the top priority for our decision-making. Based on the data, we are recommending that we start back to school 100% distance learning for the first marking period, which will go until October 21st. During the first 9 weeks during that time, we will continually assess our decision and we will be prepared for a potential in-person or hybrid return to school. Of course, we will also follow any executive order from state and federal governments. In order to implement our virtual plan, we will need continued flexibility and support from Governor Whitmer and the state legislator on our per pupil count, average daily attendance, and instructional days and hours. We are recommending an increase in the amount of synchronous teaching at the elementary and secondary levels. We are in collaboration with the Teachers Union and will be releasing specific details to the board's Academic Achievement Committee on August 5th. In conjunction with the Academic Achievement meeting, we are planning a virtual town hall on that same evening. In order to further strengthen and improve our distance learning plan, we will be launching one-to-one devices for all GRPS students. We will also be providing resources to ensure all students have reliable internet access. Parent University is in the process of developing digital literacy training for parents, and we will continue to provide technical support for students and parents. We are establishing a family help desk for just-in-time supports for our families. The Family Help Desk will be staffed to respond to general questions of all types, including technology questions, student passwords, and more. Parents can call the main line at area code 616-819-2000 or email distancelearninghelpdesk@grps.org. Our distance learning plan also includes support for material packets for students and with special needs where online learning is not the best option for our most vulnerable students. We are still planning with athletics in accordance with the executive order and MHSAA guidelines. We will follow all rules and regulations related to nutrition services. In conclusion, we said that the health, safety, and the well-being of our students and staff would be our top priority in our decision-making. I believe starting with distance learning is practicing what we preach and is by far our safest approach to the start of the 2020-21 school year. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions.
All right, so those attendees, if you have a question, if you want to pose it in the chat, we will call you in and we can kind of go from there. Craig, I'm not seeing the question show up on you said there's a question. Oh, there it is. I got it. All right. Annie Zetkowski. Craig, can you bring Annie in? She's asking, can you go into more detail about ensuring internet access for families?
Hi, Annie.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, can you just go into a little bit more detail about, obviously, internet access is a big barrier for a lot of families. So when you say that you're working on making sure that is accessible for everyone, can you detail what exactly that means?
Sure. We have local devices that we'll be distributing to families called hotspots. And also we are working with our cable providers to, and I don't want to get the name incorrect, but to ensure that they do have resources and supports with them. So we do have a number of devices that we already have in our warehouse ready to distribute to families and to students as they pick up devices for the school year.
All right, next question is from Kayla at MLive. She's asking what supports will be available for students who aren't successful using virtual learning. And Craig, I'm not sure if you can pull Kayla into it.
Hi, Kayla. She has her mic on.
You got your mute on, Kayla. Kayla, you're muted.
Okay, I think I'm all set now. Sorry about that. So for students who maybe struggle with online or aren't the self-starter type students, what sorts of supports will the district provide?
Great question. So we have several levels of support that will make sure that are in place for our students. First, starting with the classroom teacher, he or she knows their students best, and having structures around connecting with students daily in their schedules, having time for teachers to connect and follow up with students to see, is there a barrier due to technology? Is there a barrier due to lack of understanding? So we have some processes and protocols related to student engagement. Also related to that, we have supports through our support staff, deans and outreach workers and such, who will offer that secondary support for families reaching out to students that teachers have identified as someone that has not engaged as well. So we're going to try to make sure that we have a couple of different touch points for our students, starting with the classroom teacher, because he or she usually has the closest relationships with students, of course. And then having those secondary resources such as outreach workers and other staff members who can make connections with students. For our families and students where distance learning just is not working, we also will have physical packets available for them as well. So we're trying to do it in a couple of different layers or tiers, but starting primarily with the distance learning and the classroom teacher.
All right, next is from Whitney Burney. Whitney's asking, can you go into detail about how athletics will work?
So I probably won't be able to answer this fully, but what I will tell you is that we're following the MHSAA guidelines and following those different protocols related to those young people participating in sports, including staying in a cohort and making sure that practices are closed and making sure that we're following social distance guidelines, with the fact that we won't have spectators being able to participate and watch students participate and compete. So that would be kind of my overview of it. The specifics around it, I'd have to get a little bit more details for you.
The next one, and there's a question from Mark DeGroot, who's the parent. And Mark, I'm going to merge your question with a question from Emily Leonard from Wood TV. How does GRPS plan to distribute devices, the technology and internet to ensure students have what they need so they're ready? And Emily, Craig, if you can pull Emily in, that would be ideal.
Hi, Emily. I think you're on mute.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll answer. Okay, go ahead. There she goes.
Yes, my question was just about.
All right. I'd say go ahead and answer the question directly. There's an audio issue there.
Okay. So with respect to device distribution and making sure that students have access, we actually just talked about this today. We do have enough devices for all of our students to be one-to-one, and we will distribute them. We haven't decided the exact plan, but we're making sure that we will have them available to students a couple of weeks before school begins. That will be communicated more broadly. We're deciding if it'll be at individual school sites or if we're going to do smaller sites and let families pick up their devices, but we do plan on communicating that within the next week.
All right, next question is from Annie Zitkowski. We are hearing some rumblings of upwards of 100 layoffs. Can you confirm this?
I cannot confirm that, Annie, so I'm not sure where that is coming from.
Dr. Roby, if you would mind, I'll jump in on that. I believe
Sure.
this is related to the budget presentation where we had demonstrated there were 111 positions that were impacted by the approved budget cuts. However, a significant percentage of those were vacant positions. So there may not be 100 plus layoffs. It'll be dependent on whether or not there are vacancies, as well as following any kind of contractual agreements that we have that would pertain to staff layoff and notification.
I'm sorry, I was thinking just distance learning. I was not relating it back. So I apologize for that, Annie.
We have an anonymous here, that question that says, did the district consider having any in-person classes outside? There are lots of big parking lots and parks that could be used.
That's an interesting question. And no, we had not taken that as part of our plan. Thinking about one, you know, of course, there's always outdoor spaces that are available, but then if we have inclement weather, that does change and we'd have to move indoors. So that was not part of our plan. What I will share though, with respect to our plan, it is adjustable and malleable in the sense of once school gets underway and if we are deciding or seeing that we're able to do hybrid or in-person, we will also look at that moving forward. So it won't necessarily, this is our initial plan and what we're recommending to move forward as of today, but it could possibly change depending on kind of what the guidance is taking place and what phases we are as we get closer to or once school has begun.
All right, follow-up question from Annie. Any word of encouragement, comments to parents who may be panicking because they may have to choose between going to work and leaving children at home unattended or losing their jobs?
Yeah, that from a personal level, my heart definitely goes out. We are trying our best to make the best decision for our students and our staff. And certainly we, know that with this decision, it has some impact both on families either way. And I don't want families to be in those kind of tough situations. I would say, please know from the perspective of the district, we have taken all of this under advisement and weighed out multiple permutations of what this can look like for our families. And again, we are trying to do what's best for our larger community, for our students, for their safety, and for our staff for their continued safety and health.
Next question back with Emily from Wood TV. In your interactions with Kent ISD schools, do you expect other districts will follow GRPS lead and start the school year with distance learning? And
so I don't want to speak for other districts. Of course, those superintendents are in a very similar position as myself. They are listening to their community. They are talking with their constituents to find out what's going to serve their district best. I know that as we have talked as colleagues, people are in different places and it has changed as the summer has rolled on. So again, that's kind of a hard spot to put any person in to say, well, you should do this because GRPS is doing this. And transversely, I should not be making decisions and our community should not be making decisions based on what other districts are doing. I am earnestly wanting to hear the voices of GRPS students, staff, and community. And that's how we are guiding our choices.
All right, our next question is from Emma. What kind of supports and materials will be provided for students with special needs?
So we will be following students' individual education plans, or sometimes called IEPs, making sure that they have the resources and supports necessary so that they are exposed to one, grade level curriculum, because that's first and foremost. They are always a general education student first, and they have exceptionalities. And so adjusting those special education teachers, working very closely with the classroom teacher and the student's family related to what those needs will look like. And so I think it's very important that those special education teachers are staying in regular communication with the student's family to find out how distance learning is working and then tweaking as appropriate.
Next question from Whitney. Are there any resources for parents who won't be able to accommodate online learning due to work?
Yes, and so Whitney, that's a great question. We are doing both synchronous and asynchronous learning for families through Parent Academy. And just very quickly, because I know a lot of times in education we use a lot of jargon, synchronous means that we are all together, similar to how we're interacting right now, where it's live and you can ask questions, I can respond as appropriately. Asynchronous is an opportunity to record information so people can look at it at their leisure. And our plan for our parents is both. So there will be some opportunities for some in-person, right on time kind of instruction and supports related to learning our platforms and learning how to navigate through different things as they're working with their young people. And then there also will be recorded versions of that so that you can go to other platforms such as YouTube or our district website to say, I want to learn more about this. And we're trying to differentiate it because one size does not fit all. We want to make sure that we are having different resources for families based on what their needs are, and then continuing to grow our library of different resources as we get better at this distance learning experience.
All right, next from Annie Zitkowski. She says, welcome to GR. Dr. Roby, this is your first semester with GRPS. Can you talk about the challenge of starting this role in the midst of a pandemic and having to make these tough choices?
So this is certainly flying the plane while building it, so to speak. And it's been really interesting. I will say that the team, both building leaders and district leadership, as well as our school board, have been phenomenal, where we've been engaged in conversations and pushing back and throwing new ideas out to ask, what haven't we thought of? What haven't we considered? And so as I say that yes, this is my first experience and I'm new to the community, but I do not feel alone. I feel like this partnership, it really has been a partnership with our stakeholders. It's been a partnership with our families. I've had teachers reach out to me. I've had parents reach out to me and say, hey, have you considered this? Or this is what our family is dealing with. And we are taking it, I am personally taking it under consideration as we move forward. And so I will say this was not the opening to my superintendency that I expected, but I am learning so much, and I am 100% engaged in the work as we move forward.
All right, next question from Emily at Wood TV. How is GRPS equipping teachers to teach virtually?
Good question. So all of our teachers at the start of each school year go through a professional learning experience, and we've had conversations related to what that looks like, offering professional learning using a similar format to what we're in right now. There will be some things that are structured where everybody is all together, and there will be things where teachers have the opportunity to learn on their own. Within that, building in our professional learning library, again, similar to what we do with students, there's an opportunity for differentiation based on what teachers are needing. So there'll be some required things related to kind of safety protocols and instructional things as we have curriculum that teachers are expected to teach. But then there will also be other things where teachers may want to look at how do they engage students in a different way, or if there's some things that they are passionate about, we're going to continue to build that library.
Next question from Whitney. And for all those who are posing questions, just for sake of time, I'm going to start reading the questions and just having them answered. If you want to get brought in, please type that into your question. Whitney Burney is asking, how will standardized testing work this year? Will students still take the M step?
Good question, Whitney, I think it was. We have not gotten direction from MDE with respect to kind of state assessments, but as you know, at the beginning of each school year, we do assess students and we can still do that. We have a tentative schedule of what that will look like so that teachers are able to measure where their students are. They will be able to measure what approach they will be taking as they are working with students in small groups and also individually. But I have not, at this juncture, I don't have direction from the state as to state assessments, but we still will be assessing students using formative assessments. We'll be using end of unit assessments and kind of those bite marks along, or those kind of small assessments along the way so that teachers are able to adjust their curriculum as appropriate as they would do in a normal in-person format.
All right, next question. How will the district ensure that students and parents receive proper introduction to teachers and their new classmates? The question is around orientation and registration.
Great. And we still will be doing orientation and registration. It will look obviously a little different than, meeting your teacher. We will have something structured and we're working through what that looks like so that schools will roll out what their plans are for students to get registered for class and to have an opportunity to meet their classroom teachers for the 2021 school year. And so that will still take place. It'll just look a little different, excuse me.
All right, next question from Emma. The district has said it will be assessing this decision. What would lead to an in-person or hybrid learning restart during this 9 weeks?
So a couple of things I could see if we are rolled up to a phase 5 or phase 6, that would give us an opportunity to say, okay, there are fewer restrictions and that would be an opportunity to do so. If there is an executive order that basically states that, we are able to do that, we'll follow the state law, of course. Other measures, those will probably be the main ones, but I would say other measures possibly could be as we are, rolling into the school year, if we're seeing there's an adjustment and people are saying, they're needing a little bit more support, we could look at again, do we want to go to hybrid or do we want to move into a more in-person format?
Great. Shelley Irwin from WGVU, how important is attendance, i.e. for count days?
Good question. Similar to, attendance is very important for engagement, for connecting with students. And so not just for count, but we're talking about the academic experience of our young people. And so being engaged and being present for school is extremely important. And we want all of our young people to be in school every day.
Next question. What is the technology that will be used? Last year, there were a lot of challenges with iPads reported. Can you talk a little bit about the different technology being used at the pre-K through 1 and the 2 through 12?
So pre-K through 2, I think are primarily going to be using iPads, and we have purchased new iPads. We are repurposing some of the iPads that were previously in use, and then those that are too old or kind of their technology is too advanced, we are removing them from our warehouse, so to speak. For our 3rd through 12th graders, most of them will be using Chromebooks. And then with our students with some exceptionalities where they might need an iPad, we'll certainly make those available for them as well.
Dr. Roby, just some slight correction here. Or pre-K through
please.
1 is iPad and grades 2 through 12 are Chromebooks.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me.
Another question from Catherine. How will food distribution occur if school is virtual in the fall?
Catherine, we will follow guidelines given to us by MDE with respect to food distribution. I assume that students will still have access to both breakfast and lunch meals, similar to what we did this past spring, but we will follow guidelines that are given to us by the state.
Great. There are a number of individuals. I just wanted to set there are a number of questions that are coming in from staff members, parents who received the Zoom link. I'm going to respectfully ask that they please email communications@grps.org. The link, the Zoom link for media purposes was accidentally posted by at least one media outlet, if not two. There is a live.grps.org where this is streaming. There will be a public town hall meeting on August 5th to get into even more details. I'm going to continue answering, bringing in questions from the local media. And then we ask anyone who's not affiliated with the media, please feel free to contact communications@grps.org. Next question from Emily at Wood TV. Parents are asking us, how many hours per day will students be expected to be online? Their concerns surround screen time, especially for younger students.
We are building in approximately a 3-hour online day. That does not mean that students will not be responsible for what would be a typical instructional day. So there will be some things where they're online with their classroom teacher, working very closely with their teacher, doing smaller assignments and in whole class instruction. In addition to that, they will have work or assignments that they can do offline and at home, similar to what you would have during, that would be homework technically. And so we are very mindful of screen time for young people and wanting to make sure that we do have an opportunity for students to engage with their classroom teachers, to ask questions of them, and then also to have some time to do other things and to do some learning outside of the classroom teacher where they're not engaged in an online format.
All right, next question from Jen. Will there be a consistent platform used? Seesaw versus Google Hangout, that families with more children will need to know about the platforms?
Yes, great question. So there will be 2 different platforms that will be district recommended, district regulated platforms for the secondary and then for the elementary students. We are planning on using Seesaw for the elementary grade students and pre-K 8, excuse me. And then also at the secondary level, we are planning on using Schoology as the platform. I didn't say this, but I want to add this too. I think it's also important for parents to kind of from a quality control piece, and one of the things that we've been talking about as well with respect to platforms, because I know that sometimes it is harder to navigate platforms. We are also part of our training with our staff are going to be talking about looking at it from the end user perspective. And so as we are putting forth assignments and making sure that they're rigorous and that they're engaging, also to use it from their perspective, if they were the student, how easy is it for the student to upload information or to share information and things of that nature. And so I think that's also important. And I know that this spring, all of us were learning how to do school in an online format. And I know that, our work has been around getting better at it so that it really does become a very rigorous and relevant experience for our young people.
Couple more questions. From Michelle, can you go into more details about how teachers will be virtually teaching students?
And so we are still collaborating at present with the teachers union. We're working through what those schedules will look like. And our plan is to bring forward our academic plan on August 5th and you'll be able to hear more details related to that. But I don't want to go into what that's going to look like as we're still working through that plan with our teachers union.
Another question, how will parent-teacher conferences be handled this year?
Good question. I think similarly how we have done our distance learning model, making sure that we have appointed times and scheduling a time to meet with families so that they are able to have that one-on-one time or small group time with the teacher to ask, how is my child doing? What's working? You know, what suggestions do you have for improvement, and to dialogue back and forth. But that will be handled primarily at the school site. They will create schedules and communicate that out to families as to how parent-teacher conferences will look.
Great. We have a couple questions, so I'm just going to combine them, where it's asking about, will there be resources available to families with 2 working parents and without childcare options? If so, what are those resources?
The way that I'm understanding that question is, will we have resources available such as childcare? That's what I'm thinking that the question is kind of leaning to. And if that is the question, we will not be able to provide that for at this time.
All right, just a couple more here. There's a clarification question about the platforms for each grade level.
Mhm.
Can you clarify the platforms that we're planning to use?
I'm sorry,
From the
I thought there was a question
for,
following it. Okay.
Sorry, pre-K, I think just it's asking for answers to a question you mentioned earlier, but to clarify the platforms for each grade level, pre-K through 1 and 2 through 12.
Platform. So we are doing Seesaw for elementary, and for secondary, we are planning on using Schoology. And from what I recall of our plan, and Dr. Gorman, I'm gonna have you maybe correct me if I'm incorrect in saying this. Seesaw was for our elementary grade, our elementary spans, and then our secondary was using the Schoology platform.
Correct, Dr. Roby. So of course, your pre-K through 5 buildings, those will be Seesaw. All those pre-K 8 buildings will also be Seesaw. And then the secondary buildings will be Schoology.
So then let me just clarify to make sure. So those that are a traditional middle school without the elementary side will be Seesaw.
Traditional
I'm sorry,
middle
not Seesaw, Schoology.
Traditional middle schools, traditional high schools will be Schoology.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we've got 2 more questions.
Okay.
If or once we're back in session, will parents and volunteers be allowed to help out in the schools?
We will follow, again, our social distancing guidelines at that time. And we certainly want volunteers and parents to be connected to our schools. It offers a unique perspective and experience for both the students and the parents or the volunteers that are participating. I will say that we want to make sure that we follow the guidelines where we're able to kind of start engaging in a more traditional, normal way, pre-COVID way, before we would invite parents and community members into our schools. I assume that if we were to roll into school and we were still with the restrictions, we would also need to restrict other people who would be coming into our buildings just for the health and safety of both students and staff.
Just 2 final questions. One is from Emily from Wood TV. What factors are you looking at when deciding whether to resume in-person classes in late October?
We'll see where we are with recommendations similar to what we did in making our decisions for this fall. What are the health guidelines at the time? What does the governor recommend or provide guidance on? MDE, what guidance are they providing? And also the voice of our community, where we are. So we'll kind of have, it won't just be a one metric, we'll use multiple metrics and decide where we are and if we will continue with online, or if we will look at possibly bringing in a small cohort of students and then doing a hybrid model.
All right, last question, and I just want to remind everyone, if there are any follow-up questions, you're welcome to email communications@grps.org. Last question from Kyle Lim. What will special education support look like across the spectrum? Example, progress and IEP goals, OT, PT, and individualized supports.
Good question, Kyle. We have to follow by law a student's educational plan. And what that does mean is working very creatively. You know, the OT and the occupational supports are probably the most challenging, in the sense that it requires a different level of engagement and contact. So that's something that we are looking at, but we will follow that child's IEP plan and making sure that we're working very closely with the family and or the care provider of those children to ensure that they are receiving appropriate supports, both academically and then also if they have some physical challenges and things that we need to be working through, working very closely with that family or care provider.
Oops. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating. Just a reminder that the Board of Education is scheduled their Academic Achievement Committee on August 5th. Please stay tuned for a public notification that would include both the posting of that meeting and a town hall meeting where we will be presenting a higher level of details on the plans. As Dr. Roby had indicated, we're working collaboratively with the teachers union, finalizing some of those details, and we'll have more information to share at the Academic Achievement Committee on August 5th, as well as an opportunity, of course, for the town hall meeting, which will have a lot more opportunity for question and answers and additional feedback. And then the Board of Education, the full board is expected to vote on Monday, August 10th. We are required by executive order to have this plan and approved by the Board of Education on or before August 17th. And so we welcome the feedback. Again, communications@grps.org, or you can call 819-2149. We'll do our best to get you questions as quick as possible. We know there's a lot of questions that are out there, and we just welcome the questions and the feedback, and we'll do our best to get back with you in as timely manner as possible. Any final comments, Dr. Roby?
Again, thank you for your engagement. We are making the best decisions for the health and the well-being of both students and staff. And we certainly appreciate all feedback. We take it very personally and take it under advisement as we are making decisions for our district. So continue to ask questions, continue to engage us in the process, and we will certainly try to do the same as we move forward in our plan.
Thank you all.